remember I walked up into St James's and my hands, everything, my whole body just lit up. I've got goosebumps all over my skin.
I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those times, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around me, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, rider, rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those times, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that.
Good evening, everyone. We are back again. Oh,
we lost Chris.
Completely
disappeared.
But Chris is here. Do not worry. Welcome back to Loaded Mag NUFC, the fully loaded transfer show. Of course, when there's Newcastle United news, Loaded Mag NUFC are here, and there is lots to discuss tonight. That is for sure. And we have a very special guest making his debut. We'll bring him on in just a second. But just while we're waiting for Chris to come back in, Daz, how are you on this fine Tuesday evening, mate?
So good. I thought it was Wednesday for most of the day, I think, but it was absolutely mental today, all over the place, and some nice little things to talk about now today. Some movement, finally, some movement. Nothing officially confirmed yet, but plenty of almost over the line. Yeah. That's right, Alan Pardew. But how are you, Pete?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Works okay. Always a little bit of spring in my step when you see Newcastle news popping out and is being active, which is always great to see. Always great to see and always great to hear. So we'll be getting onto that in just a second. I was just about to put on there as well. Daz, you're already on it. Your tunes are in there. Mike and many others getting your tunes in. Jordy Tune for life. Get your tunes in for a shout out. Well done, everyone. It's catching on, Daz. It's catching on, that's for sure.
Yes,
slowly building. We'll get there. But look, let's not wait around too much longer. Chris will come and join us in just a second. But let's welcome in a fantastic guest making his debut from the Northern Echo. Let's welcome in Scott Wilson.
Here's Scott. Welcome back, Chris.
Hi,
welcome, Scott.
How you doing?
Chris is as well. Look at that. Full out.
Full out. Love it. Scott, thank you very much for taking the time to come and join us, boys, on the channel. Great to have you with us. And a nice debut as well. So lots of people tuning in already to listen to the chat. Now, there's only one place to start, really, because it started very early on this morning. And I was talking to Daz and the boys earlier, and I said I had to double take because I couldn't quite believe it was actually what it said it was. And it started on Instagram. Fabrizio Romano reported the "Here we go," what most fans of all clubs want to hear, that Newcastle completed the deal for Lloyd Kelly. It's then continued through. Lots of people reporting it. David Ornstein's reported it as well. And of course, Scott, yourself have reported the deal is done. It's agreed, pending a medical, looking at sort of a 5-year contract for Lloyd Kelly on a free transfer to join Newcastle United. Just want to get your thoughts on that deal. Now it's finally done. It's been a deal in the making. What are your thoughts now? It seems to be all set in stone.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's one that Eddie Howe has wanted right from the word go, for a number of different reasons. I mean, obviously, centre half is a position that is needing strengthening with Jamal and Sven Botman being out for at least the first little chunk of next season. So it became a priority position. To be fair, I think even without those injuries, centre-half's been an area that would have been strengthened this summer anyway. I mean, obviously, we saw the kind of myriad of issues that there were there last season with Dan Burn having to play in there, all the shuffling around at the back. So it was always a position they were going to look at. Straight away in the second half of last season, Lloyd Kelly and Tosin were identified as 2 free agents who were going to be available and ticked an awful lot of the boxes for Newcastle in that they're both quite young. They've both got Premier League experience. Clearly, they're moving as free agents, so PSR-wise, they're massively appealing deals. The Tosin one obviously has fallen by the wayside because Chelsea came in and kind of blew what Newcastle were offering out of the water. But while there's been interest in Lloyd Kelly, I think there's always been an awful lot of confidence from the Newcastle side that this is a deal that would get done. Kelly obviously worked with Howe at Bournemouth. They've got a pretty close relationship from that. I think also the indications right from the word go were that he was turning down offers at Bournemouth because he wanted to come to Newcastle. So I think that gave Newcastle security and confidence that even if other clubs came in, the deal would get done. And so then it was really, I think, just a case of kind of crossing the T's, dotting the I's, getting everything sorted deal-wise. I'm told it wasn't a particularly difficult deal to get done. I think it's going to be 4 years initially with a year extension, so effectively 5 years. And there's a medical to be passed. And then once that happens, I guess the transfer window kind of officially reopens at the end of this week. But Kelly's contract at Bournemouth, I'm understood, runs to the end of this month. So quite when the deal gets announced, we'll have to wait and see. But rest assured, it is done.
Okay, great news. Buzzing to hear that Lloyd Kelly's coming in. I just want to do really, just really quickly before we come back to you, Scott, just get the thoughts of Daz and Chris. Obviously, we've been talking about this ever since this sort of season ended, boys. Your initial thoughts now that you know, Daz, that deal is done and Lloyd Kelly's coming to Tyneside.
No, delighted. He's one that we wanted. We talked about him for a couple of years as well. Even paying a fee, an upfront transfer fee for him back in about a year ago or so as well. But no, his pace. He's brought out. If you listen to the Bournemouth podcast, guys, they talk about him where he came in and he replaced Ake at Bournemouth. His birthday is on takeover eve, so. It's destined. It's destined that he would end up in Newcastle.
Best month for the year. Best month for the year.
Yeah. Someone else is a birthday there. That one as well. Another piece. But no, absolutely delighted. And yeah, it allows. We shouldn't want him to slip through our fingers as well as Tosin. So no, it's over the line more or less, and we can move on now. We've priority signings elsewhere to get done as well. But Chris, your thoughts on Lloyd Kelly?
Yeah, really good deal. Really good deal. I mean, bringing in someone who can play both left back and left centre back, it's only going to improve the squad. We know that Sven Botman's going to be out for a period of time. So, bringing someone like him in on a free deal. And as you rightly say, Daz, he's a player that, Eddie Howe signed for Bournemouth and he's a player of real interest to Newcastle. And, I think I'm safe to say he's a great age. So, he's mid-20s. We're only going to see the best of Lloyd Kelly. So no, I think it's a fantastic start to the window, as Scott put in his article. It's a really strong start, and especially important as us boys spoke about, having missed out on Tosin Adarabioyo to Chelsea. It was important to get Lloyd Kelly over the line, and now we can maybe focus on possibly a right centre back, a right winger, a striker. Who knows? But either way, it's a really strong start for Newcastle in the transfer window.
It certainly is a big step forward. Getting a player that we've been looking at for quite a while. Obviously, people are disappointed about Tosin Adarabioyo, quite rightly so, because he is a talented player. But Kelly seemed to be the one that we were linked with way before Tosin was even in that discussion. So getting him through the door is crucial. Now, Scott, I just wanted to come to you with that. So we know and we're excited about that deal coming in. There are a few questions, obviously, around social media, around the fan base of where do you think, in your opinion, he's going to play? Because as we've talked about, he has got the ability of playing left back. Yeah. He can play left centre back. Where do you think, in your opinion, that Eddie Howe's bringing him in to play primarily?
I think primarily as a centre half. Certainly initially, because obviously, as we've said, you know, in pre-season and probably the first month of the Premier League season, Newcastle are going to need those options at centre half, because it doesn't sound like Botman or Lascelles are going to be ready at that stage. So I think initially centre half. I guess then the interesting thing is, where's Dan Burn going to play next season, isn't it? You know, and that's an interesting one, because does Eddie Howe still see Dan Burn as a left back, and, you know, potentially his first choice left back, depending on how he marries up with Lewis Hall, or does he see him as now a centre half, given that he obviously moved in there for the last month or so of the season? I think he probably still sees Burn as his best defensive left back, with Lewis Hall clearly being the better offensive left back option. And I think if that's the way that he's thinking, then I think Kelly will initially, at least anyway, be coming in primarily as a centre half. But as you rightly say, the fact he can do both roles is really valuable, given that, you know, we know that Newcastle had their injury issues last season. Hopefully, once Botman and Lascelles are back, there won't be a recurrence of that. But having defenders who can slot across that back line is well, it was worth its weight in gold last season, wasn't it? Plugging the gaps.
Definitely. And Eddie Howe, you know, he always talks about his versatility. He loves a player that can play in more than one position, and that's definitely what Lloyd Kelly can do. It's going to be an interesting one, boys, just because, you know, watching Bournemouth, I didn't watch Bournemouth week in, week out religiously, but the games that I did watch, I always go back to the Man United game at the Vitality. Lloyd Kelly did play left back, and he actually played really well there, and destroyed Man United's right-hand side. So it is an interesting one, and maybe our answers, or our questions, should I say, will be answered later on in the window, whether we do sort of get another centre-back option in. Because but obviously, I'll ask yourself, Scott, with the fact that Tosin was a viable option, and we probably would have signed him if he'd decided to come to us. You know, does that mean that Newcastle United are going to go out and get another centre-back, in your opinion?
I think they want another defender, yeah, and I think it probably will be a centre-back. I think ideally, again, they'd probably like it to be a centre-back who has a degree of versatility. But yeah, I think they will sign another defender. Now, where does that fall on the list of priorities in terms of the pot of money that's there at the moment? It's probably not the deal that they're going to commit most of the money to, because I think that's coming at the other end of the pitch, which we'll probably get onto later on. But And so that's why Tosin would have been attractive, because, you know, to get two defenders in, both as free agents, you know, was almost a kind of dream scenario, if you like, in terms of PSR. So yeah, there is a desire to bring in another defender, but I don't think it's going to be the deal or one of the kind of top two deals that probably Newcastle are committing the most money to this summer.
Yeah, and that's understandable. Like I say, and you've mentioned it as well, Scott, that there are definitely other priority positions that I'm sure we will get into. Any quick comments, Daz, before we move on?
Just one, because Andy asked the question. Andy Ford asked the question: Can Kelly play at the right side of the centre back? Now I know if you look up on the internet, it says he can play kind of a right centre back. But I don't think that Eddie Howe signed him as a centre back, but as a left-sided centre back. So I have a feeling he's not going to play there. That's the only comment I wanted to answer Andy's question.
Okay, no, good question, and get your questions in. Get your questions in for ourselves, for Scott. It'd be good to be able to answer some of your questions on some of the comments. So exciting to see that happen. And of course, the one thing that we hadn't sort of touched on, but Scott covered, is Lloyd Kelly's medical test for Fabrizio Romano later on this afternoon. Mentioned that the medical is likely to be done at some point within the next week. So we'll hopefully get some formal confirmation not too long after that point. So Lloyd Kelly finally coming towards Newcastle United. Great news on that. Now, this conversation we'll come back to, and we'll probably continue to come back to, when something really formalizes, and it's with the goalkeeping situation. So lots of reports. Daz is already laughing because he knows how much we've talked about the goalkeeping situation over the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's been absolutely constant. So let's have a look at the goalkeeping situation, because you know it's it's sort of a never-ending sort of merry-go-round with the same goalkeepers. We've had initially Aaron Ramsdale, then Georgie Mamardashvili. Looked like there was even a bid coming as reports from Spain were to be believed, and then Newcastle journalists, yourself, have reported on the likes of James Trafford, and you've touched on, Scott, talking about turning our attentions, our focus to James Trafford with the situation with Georgie Mamardashvili and his valuation. And at the weekend, it was touched on that there was a bid gone in, 16 million roughly. Burnley were looking around 20 million. And you also then reported it was getting closer. It was getting closer potentially to that deal. Like, how is it looking now from your perspective on Tuesday with regards to that deal? Are we looking any closer? Is James Trafford the one to go for?
Yeah, so I think it's a deal that will happen. So Newcastle want a goalkeeper. We'll probably get to the Dubravka situation in a minute, but I think he's going to leave this summer. Karius is clearly already gone. Gillespie's been retained as the number 3. So there's a gap there for a number 2 or potentially a number 1 if they battle with Pope and kind of win the spot in pre-season or whatever. Now, I think Newcastle's preference a month ago was Mamardashvili, and I think they'd been led to kind of believe that there potentially was a deal to be done there with Valencia. I think it became pretty evident early on in discussions with Valencia that actually that deal was going to be way more difficult and way more expensive than Newcastle had been led to believe. And that's before Mamardashvili heads off to the Euros with Georgia, where, Georgia probably unlikely to get through, but could do well, and his kind of value and price it go even higher than where it's at the minute, which I'm led to believe Newcastle already feel is too high and beyond what they would want to pay. So then it was okay. Where do we go? Ramsdale's been talked about for quite a while, but again, I think Newcastle have always felt that he's going to be too expensive and it's going to be a difficult deal to be done with Arsenal. Trafford is clearly in a different situation. He's going to be that bit cheaper. He clearly plays for a club that were relegated last season and so are going to have to cut their cloth to a degree and are going to be wanting to bring money in. So I think straight away that felt like an easier deal to be done. And my understanding is that the initial kind of contact and talks that there's been between Newcastle and Burnley lead Newcastle to believe that, yes, there is a deal there that can be done. Trafford's obviously been away with England, didn't make the cut. So I think, dialogue with him or getting a feel for what he wants has been more difficult. But I think the feeling is that he'd be very keen to come to Newcastle. And like I say, I think there's a deal there to be done with Burnley. So my read on that is that as things are looking at the minute, I think that is a deal that's likelier to happen than not happen.
All right, looking like it's going to be James Trafford. Look, boys, we've had a few days to think about it, a few days to kind of get our head around it, because Scott, you won't be aware of this, but we were kind of hoping that Georgie Mamardashvili was coming in. We'd watched him, we'd seen how good he was, top goalkeeper. But how are we feeling now, boys, with regards to the James Trafford situation? Are we feeling differently? Are we looking at the situation differently now that Scott's kind of given us the lowdown of why it's kind of going in this direction? Daz, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking with Scott's news this morning. I'm calling it Scott's news because that's where I saw it first, was about Dubravka. I want to kind of throw another curveball in, and it could be what you were going to say as well, Chris. So sorry, apologies if it is, but is there some alternative universe where we could, Karius is gone, sell Dubravka, Gillespie is third, fourth choice, and could we potentially sell Pope and bring in Mamardashvili and James Trafford? Or they're both, like, Mamardashvili is 23, Trafford is younger again. It would be a crazy move for Trafford then to come to us, because he's not. It's unlikely that he'll get ahead of Mamardashvili, so it's probably a crazy scenario. But can you see anything like that happen by selling Pope?
I think the problem you've got there is Pope's age. I think the likelihood of getting anything like the sum that you'd have to pay for Mamardashvili from selling Pope just won't happen because of the difference in ages, really, and where they're at in their careers. Yeah. I think that's the problem that Newcastle have kind of have in this situation, that they've got two very good keepers, but they've got two keepers who are in their 30s. And so the value of them, there's a ceiling to what you're ever going to get for that type of keeper, which is why I think they were very strong that if they're going to move for a keeper this summer, it's going to be for a much younger keeper on a long-term deal who kind of ticks a spot for the long term, if you like. Now, you know, I think Newcastle's preference would be Mamardashvili. My understanding is that it has been, but they just don't think that's a deal that can be done, either in terms of getting him out of Valencia full stop initially, but then for a fee that is doable for what else they want to do this summer.
Yeah, there was some talk, and this could be Twitter talk now more than anything else, that 41 million was a figure that with Newcastle were going. 41 million euro, and then that the goalposts were changed to 45 million euro or something along those kind of lines. So yeah, it's hard to know what to believe, but it does look like Trafford is the one, and we're not going for Mamardashvili.
Chris, you had a follow-up question to that, didn't you?
Yeah, and do you know what? I really enjoyed Daz's question, and it wasn't that, but it was a great question, Daz. I suppose we're very cynical on Loads of Mag, Scott. You know, we're weather hardened to all of these transfer windows, things moving. I suppose what I'm hoping for, I'm clutching at straws here, but what I'm hoping for is, do you think that there's any possibility that Newcastle have approached Valencia, as you say, and the deal looks hard to be done, stuff like that? And Newcastle have been very public in their approach of James Trafford, knowing, and it feels like we've lowballed him a little bit, or we've lowballed Burnley a little bit, maybe trying to put a little bit of pressure on Valencia so that there's any, possibility that if, I don't know, the rumours are that Burnley want upwards of 20 million for Trafford and we've gone in with 15, 16 million. Do you think that, what I'm trying to ask you is, do you think that the door is completely closed on Mamardashvili, or do you think that we've very much left an offer on the table and the offer's still there, and if the deal could be done, that they would maybe manoeuvre to try and get this done? Like, do you think he's high up on Newcastle's list in terms of transfer priorities?
I mean, I think, so I don't, the interest in Mamardashvili is not dead, in that if Valencia were to come back tomorrow and say, do you know what, we've completely changed our mind, what you want is doable, let's do it, then I think he has been Newcastle's number one preference. I think the feeling that I get from talking to people is that it's too far off, that it's not just a case of let's nudge $1 million here, or let's talk an add-on here, or whatever. My feeling is that it's a fair way off, and so Newcastle think, do you know what, we don't think that's going to happen. Trafford, we think, is the best alternative that's out there now. Let's get him before he comes off the market and we're scrambling around for choice C, D, E, F, whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, and as you said yourself, Scott, as well, with him going to the Euros now as well, the chances are that if he has a great tournament, that his price is going to increase further. So if it was, we should have got it done earlier if that was our intention.
I thought you were going to use the key word, Chris, the smoke screen. I thought that is the word we've heard many a time on Loaded Mag. I thought you were going, but you didn't. But you've touched on one other player, so we'll bring on him. And it's still in the goalkeeper situation, but it's going out. And I know you've touched on Martin Dubravka. You reported on it today. Celtic lining up a summer move. Does this look pretty straightforward? Does it look like, in your opinion, and what you know, that Celtic is the team he's going to move to?
No, I don't think it's that clear cut yet. I think that there'll be more offers for him. I think I'm led to believe that the interest from Celtic is concrete, and that they want him, and that they're very interested in him. I think a lot of that, I would imagine a move to Celtic would probably make a fair bit of appeal for Dubravka at the stage of his career. He's at European football, go and win a title, maybe, that kind of stuff. But having said that, he will probably get offers from various teams on the continent as well, and he might want to head nearer back to Slovakia, or I honestly don't know that. What I do think is that I'd be very surprised. I'd be very, very surprised if he's still a Newcastle player come the end of the transfer window. I think his departure is feeling inevitable, because the fact that Newcastle are moving so strongly to bring in another goalkeeper. I know there was talk bits of talk earlier on. Well, is it Pope that's going? I don't think it is. No, I think that Nick Pope will stay with Newcastle, and I think Eddie Howe's being pretty firm on that. So I think Dubravka is the one who will go. And as a 35-year-old with a year left on his contract, it probably makes sense, doesn't it? Newcastle are not going to get fortunes for him, but they will get, a reasonable sum for him selling him now. Whereas obviously, if you leave it for another 6 months or 12 months, then you're pretty much giving him away for nothing.
Yeah. Definitely. I think, well, you don't have to even, I'm not even going to mention it because I think the boys know what I feel about Martin Dubravka. I think it's time for him to leave. I think it's our time to sort of cash in, if we can cash in and get anything from him. So, that just means that we're in a position where we can strengthen that area. And if James Trafford is that player, then so be it. Because I think, Chris, would you agree with this statement that we've upgraded? If Dubravka leaves, Trafford comes in.
Oh yeah, 100%. Look at the age alone, and a different style of keeper as well. So if the worst came to worst and it didn't work out in Newcastle, we could sell him on again. Whereas if we were bringing in Dubravka, let's say, and getting rid of Trafford, there's no resale value there. So it makes sense.
Brilliant stuff. So we'll come to another player because I think we've got you for a little bit longer, which is great to hear. And then we'll the questions are flying in, so we'll do some quick fire round questions from people in the chat. Great to have so many people in the chat. Well over 300 in the chat. Great to have you with us. Make sure you click that like. I know Lisa and a few others will remind you, click that like and obviously do all that good housekeeping stuff and subscribe to the channel as we continue to build as well. Thank you for your support. Another player that you mentioned within one of your reports today, and it was obviously with the situation with Ryan Kelly, wasn't just the only player you were talking about. Ryan Fraser has come out in this last 24 hours as a player that looks dead certain to move on. You've reported on it, Scott, as well as that, Jacob Tanswell, along with Chris Woff of The Athletic, reported that deal seems to be done. Fine tuning one or two last bits, but looking like he is going to return after his loan move to Southampton. What's the latest from what you know in that situation?
So as far as I'm aware, at the end of the season, Southampton basically came to Newcastle and said, we want to sign Ryan Fraser. Ryan Fraser said, I want to go to Southampton. So Newcastle have basically said, okay, well, sort yourselves out first, get a deal done there, get your terms organised, sort all that. Then we'll work out how this is going to work, fees, etc., etc. So my understanding on it is that everything is now sorted at the Southampton end in terms of their dealings with Fraser, the deal he's going to get, all that kind of stuff. It's just a question now of them coming to an arrangement with Newcastle, which, given the kind of history between Howe and Fraser and the fact that he was training with the under-21s and all of that, I cannot imagine that Newcastle are going to dig their heels in any, they want Ryan Fraser out with the building. So the fact that Fraser wants to go to Southampton and the deal's sorted down there, I just think that this, there will be a pretty quick resolution to it, I would imagine, and Fraser will head off to Southampton and see how he gets on in the Premier League there.
Daz, I think you just put in our private chat. The one thing I was going to come to next, but maybe you can bring those questions up, because talking about Ryan Fraser, we've talked about him on other Fully Loaded transfer shows over the last week. One thing that the fans want to know, and Daz, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, well, some people on this panel, I won't name names, the two other members of the panel, thought they could get about 8 million for Ryan Fraser. But I said something like 2-3 million max, or was it 1.75? I can't remember. But yeah.
I'd be more in your camp, Taz. I'd be more in your camp. If Newcastle can get 8 or 10 million for Ryan Fraser, then I think their negotiating team wants a massive pat on the back. They'll probably deserve a chunk of it, to be fair. The problem is everybody knows Newcastle just one shot. That's the problem.
Yeah, so it's a problem, isn't it?
It's a difficult situation as a selling club when everybody knows that you want Reid, and realistically, there's only really one place he's going to go to because they want him and he wants to go there. So 2-3 million feels probably likely somewhere. You know, if they could get up to 5, I think they've done incredibly well. It may be that there's add-ons that Newcastle can kind of add on to it, potentially say extra if Southampton survive for a year in the Premier League.
Yeah. So you're saying 8 million there, Scott?
Yes, Chris. Yes, Chris.
Let it go.
All deals seem to have add-ons factored in now, so it wouldn't surprise me if there was a couple of bits tagged on that kind of kicked in if Southampton stayed up. But yeah, I think Newcastle, have written him off to such a degree that kind of anything they get in will do to a pretty much.
But Scott, let's look the other way because there's a few questions like this. Is maybe Newcastle have written him off, but has he written off his contract with Newcastle? Is he looking for money to leave Newcastle? Because they're asking, is he looking for compensation to accept the free transfer?
And obviously all of that will come into it, won't it? So it may well be that a proportion of whatever fee is agreed has to be diverted to Fraser to effectively, compensate him for what would have been, and that will be deemed a signing on fee, I guess. And that's the kind of way that sometimes money gets shuffled around in these deals. That part of the kind of headline fee is actually taken off and used as a kind of signing on fee. So. I would imagine he'll do okay out of it, whatever way it's carved up.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe 8 million, lads, but we'll only see 2 of it.
But if it's 8 million on the books, we'll take it.
Oh, yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, I think, having revised our opinions, Chris, I think we'd take 2 or 3 million. At this stage, that's for sure. So we'll take the L on that one, and we'll move on very, very swiftly. But great questions and great comments in the chat. Loving it. Keep it up. Another player, and someone else has just brought it up. Actually, I just seen it in the chat further on down. Another one that gauged a lot of interest the other day. We talked about it on Sunday in the Full Loaded Transfer Show, and it's about this man, Scott, Sean Longstaff. We talked about him, and to be fair, Scott, we'd mentioned way back when we do a show called Squad Game. Daz puts it together. We look at the squad, and who we're going to sell, who we're going to keep, who we're going to loan, and we all said as a 3 that we thought, if someone comes in with a bid, year left on his contract, it could be a possibility. And Leicester seemed to be, as Mirror reported it, and the Foss Hub Leicester account, that they're preparing a 15 million bid. Now, bid's not gone in, but rumours are swirling that could be a potential. Like, could that actually be a potential this summer? Could we actually see Sean Longstaff moved on?
Longstaff's an interesting one because obviously the way the PSR works, because he's an academy homegrown player, anything Newcastle get is deemed as effectively pure profit. So selling a homegrown player, it seems counterintuitive because clubs are meant to be encouraged to bring on these players, but selling a homegrown player is a massive tick in the box PSR wise. That said, Eddie Howe is a big fan of Sean Longstaff. He values the commitment he gives him. He values what he offers in midfield. He values the fact that he's a really good squad player. All of that. So I think Howe would be very, very loath to get to sell him. Now, that said, I think we're all kind of know, and I think Newcastle have banged the drum loud enough for us to know that somebody is going to have to leave this summer. The reports obviously came out that had to be before June the 30th. I think the club are kind of quietly disputing that and saying that, that there's ways and means that they can make things work before that cut-off point for the accounts. But at some stage this summer, somebody is going to have to leave if they want to do the business that they're doing now. Who's that going to? We've talked about Dubravka, Fraser. You can trim a little bit round the edges, but that's not going to bring in the kind of sum that Newcastle needs. So who are you looking at realistically? Wilson, maybe, though I'd question probably how much, given Wilson's age and injury record, you're going to get with him. Almiron, feels potentially more likely, given all the links with Saudi Arabia in January. You know, that was a deal that was bubbling along for a while in January. It didn't happen, but it was one that Newcastle were contemplating. Or Longstaff. It probably feels one of those three is the likeliest probably to leave, to bring in the kind of sum that Newcastle are talking about. If you put a gun to my head now, I'd say I think Almiron's probably the likeliest, just because of all the talk that there was around that in January. But if Newcastle were to get an offer of 15, 20, 25 million for Longstaff, then that deal pretty much solves their summer PSI issues at a stroke. So I think they'd have to consider it. Like I say, I've always felt from the end of last season that for me, Almiron feels the likelier. But I couldn't sit here now and say no, Longstaff wouldn't happen, because, like I say, if that bid actually came on the table, Newcastle would have to think about it.
What about Trippier as well, Scott?
Well, Trippier's an interesting one again, in that just because of his age. I mean, it feels like Trippier, as an England international who's going to be, you know, a massive part of the team that plays in the Euros the next couple of weeks, should be really, really valuable. Because of his age and everything, he'd go for less than a Longstaff or an Almiron, as counterintuitive as that seems. So I think Trippier, there will be interest in Trippier. But again, I think Howe would push really hard to keep Trippier, just because he's his lieutenant, isn't he? You know, his influence in the dressing room is clearly massive. So I think there'd be a bigger push to keep Trippier, just because I'm not sure that you'd get the money for Trippier that you probably think you should, given his kind of status. Whereas because of Longstaff's age, and because Almiron does seem to be fairly appealing to clubs in Saudi Arabia and on the continent, I think you'd get more for either of them than you would for Trippier.
Yeah. Unless Trippier was going to Saudi as well.
Well, yeah, which is not inconceivable. Yeah.
Jordan Cronin did report on his channel, mentioned that he'd had rumours of Trippier going to Saudi. We mentioned on the show on Sunday for a load of transfer show that the Saudi window doesn't open until the 17th of July. So that's why I think for all the Premier League clubs, we're not hearing as much about Saudi Arabia movements in terms of transfers. I think July, potentially, that could really kick into gear. But Jason Scott mentions your noises of 25 million for Longstaff is delicious. They were his comments. There we go. He's very happy about that. And interesting that you mentioned, before we come to questions from the chat, you mentioned about Miguel Almiron. Fabrizio Romano also mentioned today that his future remains open. Obviously, we missed out on the Saudi Pro League move. He didn't want that move, as has been reported before, but we're open to selling him, as he reports. So again, as you've mentioned, it could well be that Miguel Almiron is the one.
I'll just jump in there as well. I think one of the other things with Almiron is Newcastle are very much in the market to try and sign a right-sided forward this summer. And I think that if that is as big a priority as I think me and other journalists up here are being led to believe, then that would make you question Almiron's kind of future and status within the squad a bit more as well.
Definitely. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat for Scott, so we'll fire some his way, because I know he's got to head off very shortly.
Okay, 5 minutes. Let's go. See what we can do. All right. Ethan also comes with good questions. Did missing out on Torsten Costas deals like Marmashvili?
No, I don't think so, because I think that Torsten was coming to Newcastle. He was keen on it. It wasn't a case of that he didn't like the project or anything like that. I think it was just the fact that Chelsea almost added another note onto what you were talking, both in terms of, you know, we not another note, but an awful lot more in terms of wages than Newcastle were willing to pay or were going to go to. And I think, you know, I know Torsten will say he buys into the project or this kind of stuff, but I think that one was as simple as they just offered him a shed load more money.
Yeah. Footballers saying things at the signing. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's go to Gavin James, and he asked the question, Morgan Gibbs-White. And I suppose I'm going to change your question a bit slightly, Gavin. I'm going to say, could we do some kind of a deal for Morgan Gibbs-White, especially with the PSR issues coming towards the end of July? Let's say, for example, give them Longstaff, and we take Morgan Gibbs-White and a bit of cash either way and balance the books.
Yeah. I mean, Gibbs-White is a name that I do hear sporadically. I think he's certainly on Newcastle's radar, as it were. I think, you know, he's I mean, he had a pretty good second half to the season in particular, didn't he, with Forest? I think there's a few players in that kind of mould, that Newcastle will potentially be looking at this summer. I mean, Smith Rowe at Arsenal's another one that's always been talked about, that the club have liked for quite a while. Just because he's coming out of Arsenal, he'd probably be a lot more expensive. But yeah, attacking. I think that they want an attacking player in the mould of kind of what they've got at the minute, where it's a wide player but not a winger, if you like. I think they want a fairly versatile forward who can play off the right. And there's a few options they've got there. I Gibbs White is in that mix, I think. Yeah.
Cool. Right, let's go to the next one from Steve. Ian Acho is a target according to the Daily Mirror. Has Scott heard anything about this link? So we're thinking here for like a third striking option.
Yeah, I mean, a name that was linked with Newcastle fairly regularly back in the day, wasn't he? So I think there has been a degree of interest there in the past. I think at the moment, I mean, he didn't exactly tear it up with Leicester in the Championship, did he? He was kind of in and out there. It's not a name that I've heard mentioned in the last few weeks. I think Newcastle will probably back themselves to get a better striker than that.
Cool. We've got another two minutes, I think. Want to go to right wingers, Scott? Who are you having for right wing? Who do you think you go for?
It's an interest. Like I say, my understanding is that while we're talking about a right winger, they're much more wanting a player who will play off the right but come inside, can play across the forward line if needed. I mean, really, what they want is Almiron, but with an extra 10% on, because Almiron ticks most of the boxes in what they want as a wide attacker. You know, Eddie Howe will want someone who leads the press, who is full of energy. In terms of names, I don't want to mess you around. I honestly don't know. I haven't heard that it's got to the stage of approaching players and actually having names there. Now, someone like Lloyd Kelly, you do that deal because he's a free agent, he's moving anywhere. I think trying to get players out of clubs is going to be really, really difficult for the next month because a whole host of top players are at the Euros. All the leading agents are out there at the Euros. Club managers are either on holiday or scouting players at the Euros. So I think that in terms of actually signing players from clubs, I think that's going to be pretty difficult in the next month.
Okay, so yeah, that ties in with Ethan's question. So when do you think that you can see the bulk of the business being done?
I think that, so you can almost break it into three bits. I think you've got the first bit now, which is free agents, deals that were pretty much already done last season. Then I think there will be a little bit of movement before this kind of accounting cut off at the end of the month, because there are clearly 2 or 3 Premier League clubs who we know of who have to bring money in before the end of the month. Otherwise, they're going to be breaching the rules and they're going to be hit with points penalties. So I think there will be some movement there. And I think there's a chance that Newcastle could be involved in that if somebody suddenly becomes available at the last minute before the end of the month for when you didn't necessarily know that. Then I think we'll see a bit of a lull. And then as usual, I think the bulk of it will tend to be the back end of July, start of August, when players are starting to come back into pre-season. Managers are getting their head around who's in, who's out, who's there, who's surplus requirements. And then inevitably there'll be the last flurry in the couple of last days of the window, just because there always is.
Last question, Scott, because I know we're out of time. But Minta.
Yeah.
Is he on the move?
I'm starting to worry that he could be. I thought that for most of last season, Eddie Howe, when he was asked questions on him, was angling towards getting him back in and having a proper look at him in pre-season and seeing exactly where he's at and potentially giving him a chance. I still think there's a chance that might happen. I mean, clearly the appeal with selling Mint. I understand why a lot of people think it'll be a crying shame if you get rid of him, because I do think there's a chance that you sell him and in 5 years' time he's a superstar. Now he might not be. It's still very early for him, and let's be honest, he's only done it in the Dutch league, and I say that with greatest respect. But there's a fair gulf from there to the Premier League still in terms of the depth and the quality of the competition. But it could be. That said, if you're going to Eddie Howe and saying, look, you've got to sell someone, and actually you can sell someone who is your player, but actually hasn't been your player. So really, you're getting your sale in without weakening the squad that you had last season in any way, shape or form, then I do understand why that might make a bit of appeal. So I guess my answer to that is, I'd be disappointed in some ways if they did, but I could understand it. And I do think it's something that is being discussed as a possibility. Now, there's been talk of Liverpool interest, this, that, and the other. My understanding is there's certainly not been anything like a bid or a formal approach for Minter. So at the minute, it's a bit of a hypothetical still for Newcastle. But it's another one, a bit like Longstaff, where if someone came and bid 35 million, 40 million for a player that, while he's got massive potential, has never actually kicked the ball for you, I could kind of understand why you'd say, okay, well, we'll do that, and then that solves our problems.
Yeah. I can see it, and we've spoke about it as well. Some people are not happy about it, but when you look at it like you have, Scott, absolutely. Look, I know you've got to go, but
perfect.
Look, Jason Scott, I think talks for all of us here. Great guest, level-headed, and just tells it exactly how it is. So,
well, I really enjoyed it, fellas, and I'd love to come back on later in the summer.
Definitely,
Brilliant.
more than welcome anytime, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. But look, for now, we'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and look, we'll look forward to having you on again very, very soon, Scott.
Thank you very much.
You take
care, Scott.
We'll think about it, Scott. No, you're welcome back anytime.
Take care, Scott. Brilliant to have Scott on. Great guest.
Cheers, Scott. And
making his debut as well. Brilliant to talk all things Newcastle United. And having some great questions in the chat. Some brilliant questions in the chat, and I think Daz is a few seconds behind. Us. So his reactions are a few seconds behind what we're saying. I think he's possibly going to be rebooting at some point. But yeah, enjoyed that, Chris. Some good chat, some good updates.
Do you know what, mate? Very, very good. And it's always nice. It's always nice getting journalists on. It is always great because you get that little bit of insider knowledge, and people in the chat appreciate it. We appreciate it. And it's always nice having a new guest on. Nice to meet someone new, isn't it? And as much as we love our other guests, and we absolutely do, it is always nice to hear the opinion of others. And it's also nice to hear that Scott kind of shares the same opinion as ourselves and the people in our chat. Saying about Minter, we don't want to lose him, but it makes sense. And obviously the Mamadashvili talk. So it's great to hear that. So we're not far off. We might be slightly far off on Fraser's transfer fee, Pete, but everything else we were absolutely spot on about.
Well, if there's some additions, Southampton stay in the league, all the rest of it could work. I think we said Daz will be back with us just shortly. I think he's just rebooted, but I think we said, Chris, between, I could be wrong, between 5 and 8 million.
We said between 5 and 8.
So and Scott did mention if between 3 and 5 could be a deal. Well, we'll take that.
Do you know what the difficulty is? And all jokes aside, the difficulty is, Pete. Like, he had a very good season for Southampton, and Southampton got promoted, as we all know. And you're hearing like Somerville from Leeds getting quoted as 20 million, 25, 30 million. So you go, well, surely Ryan Fraser's worth 5, 6, 7, 8 million, because they want to keep him. The difficulty, I suppose, and Scott raised a good point, is the fact that it's the worst kept secret in the world that we want him out, and he's desperate to leave. So that obviously will reduce the fee, because they know that if the deal's lined up, we're basically just going to say, don't hit the door on your way out. So, that's the only difficulty, I think.
Just to remember, though, and you're right, and we're right to think that. Obviously, we're desperate to get him out. We're desperate to move him on. But equally, he's back. Daz is back.
Desperate to get rid of me.
No. We didn't know where you were going. We weren't sure what was happening there. But with Ryan Fraser, we're desperate to get rid of him, but he's desperate to go to Southampton. So there has to be an agreement in there somewhere. Is that Absolutely. Look, we want him off the books, of course. He wants to be off the books. He ain't going to want to come back and train with the under 21s or 23s, whatever. He's going to want to go and play Premier League football. And he's got a team that he knows the manager loves him, the players love him, and he's likely to start week in, week out. Like, where else in the Premier League is Ryan Fraser going to get that? So he's got to maybe think to himself, well, I need to go. And this is my time now, at 28, 29. I need to go and play like regular football. So, it's going to work, but it has to work both ways. And I think, for us, okay, we want him off the books. Yeah, let him go on a free. But he's 28, 29 years old. Like, we should be getting at least a few million for him. At least a few million, in my opinion. So, if we can get that, great. If we can get 8, even better. That's not a great. It's not a great age. That's a great wage. That is for sure. But boys, a few other bits we could potentially talk about. We could answer maybe some questions on things. It's been a bit of a whirlwind day. Not going to lie. Lots of news popping out all over the place, and we've covered.
Isaac Hayden one there. I noticed that before I popped on. I've seen that we've apparently agreed to settle his contract, or the remaining year of his contract.
Yeah, he wants back. I think he wants back at QPR. I think he had a good stint there. The fans love him. They want him back, but obviously he's got this. I think he's got 2 years left on his deal.
Was it 2 years? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 26. It might be 26. His contract runs out.
I'll check it because I have the data here from Squad Game, so I'll check that out.
Yeah. So
were you while Daz was checking that, Pete? Were you encouraged by what Scott said about Mamardashvili? I kind of felt quite encouraged by it, in the fact that he seems to think that Mamardashvili, is high on Newcastle's list, and he probably was number one choice, and that maybe we've gone to Trafford given that the Mamardashvili deal looks too expensive, but not ruling him out completely.
So, sorry, just to answer the question, Hayden's contract is June 2026, by the way.
So it's 2 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 2 years to buy out that contract. So we'll be paying a pretty penny to buy him out. But I think it's just best. I think Isaac Hayden is a professional enough guy to go, you know what? I need to move on. You want me out. I want you out. It's time to kind of just let's just settle this in some way. I think it will be done amicably, unlike a Ryan Fraser probably wouldn't. I think Isaac Hayden respects the club enough to do it the right way, and I think he'll leave with a nominal fee probably to be able to continue his career, because he's a good player, good servant for the club. Obviously, just wasn't really good enough, and I think Eddie Howe saw that quite early on. And he's had loads of injury issues since. But one thing I wanted to mention to you boys, I've had it on here for a while now. I've not brought it up, not necessarily directly linked to Newcastle, but interesting that Scott Wilson mentioned about Emil Smith-Rowe, because Graham Bailey did report on this a week or so ago. He's ready to leave Arsenal this summer, and they wouldn't stand in his way as long as the valuation is met. Now, the valuation is up for discussion. It wasn't really made clear what that valuation was, but number of Premier League clubs interested in him. Now, he was a player that was linked with us before, boys. Like, is he at this stage somebody you would consider signing for Newcastle United? Because I think if we'd have gone back a year or two, the answer probably would have been yes. But in your opinions now, boys, is Emil Smith-Rowe a player that you would take as a signing at Newcastle United this summer?
I like Emil Smith Rowe, but exactly as you said, it was like 2 years ago. I think it was on lockdown time. He was unreal, but the injuries, and that's the big worry. I don't want to be us signing. Fair enough, signing someone and they get injured when they're with us, but signing someone that we know is injury prone already. I know we have to take it. Bringing in Kelly, who could fall into that category maybe, but that wasn't a free. But when you have to pay a transfer fee as well. No, I would look elsewhere. He is a very good player, though. And in the same vein, then I'm jumping Chip from and Neto falls into that category from Wolves because he costs twice the price and he's injury prone as well. Great players, but I look for someone that can stay fit. It's no good being a great player and be sitting on the bench or not even be able to sit on the bench.
Yeah, well, what are your thoughts? Are you similar to Daz? With regards to Emil Smith Rowe, is your kind of opinion changed of him, Chris?
I mean, I've got to be honest, at the bottom of that Graham Bailey article, it seemed to allude to the fact that Arsenal would want 30 million for him. And if you were saying 30 million, I wouldn't be paying that price. I think 30 million is too high. It's too much of a risk. But yeah, I think he's a talented player. And I think he's someone who would come in and do a job. He's probably in the same kind of bracket as Morgan Gibbs-White, although I think he's got more injury concerns around him. So that is more of an issue. Maybe he's not as versatile as Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm not 100% sure on that. I mean, I know he can play at multiple different positions, but I think personally I'd rather go for Morgan Gibbs-White. But more interestingly, Eddie Howe and Jason Tindall would be worried because Arsenal's song for Emil Smith Rowe is the same one that we've got for Eddie Howe and Jason Tindall because they sing Saka and Emil Smith Rowe. So we might have to change our song if we do sign him. But yeah, he's an interesting player, but at the right price. And I worry that Arsenal would price him out of a deal, if I'm honest. Maybe they'll come down from below that 30 million, but 30 million would be far too high, in my opinion, for Emil Smith Rowe. But he is a talented lad.
Maybe a new song for Trafford and Emil Smith Rowe.
Yeah, maybe.
Trafford's got a bit of work to do to get into the first team first, but
Before you move on, Pete, I want to go give a shout out to Gavin James as well, who became a member. He's Loaded Ultra. We brought up a question earlier, Gavin, but I just wanted to give you a shout out for becoming a member as well. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the family.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think we've got a few questions that we can come to, but there's one topic that I wanted to bring up that's not Newcastle related, but could directly affect Newcastle United. And it's this one. It's involving Aston Villa. They've become a topic of conversation that links to Newcastle United. And the Times have reported the Premier League is facing a threat of another legal challenge after Aston Villa's owner revealed he was contemplating a formal complaint against its profit and sustainability rules. And to be fair, other people have reported on this as the day's going on. And it looks like the Aston Villa owner is actually genuinely considering a legal challenge. Now, that comes out after, in the last couple of days, the Premier League have reported record fees been spent on legal challenges over the last couple of years. I think it amounted to something like £30 million worth of legal fees that have been paid out through legal challenges against or Premier League clubs challenging against the Premier League, which has never been seen before. What do you make of this situation? And it all boils down to, and to be fair, the 12-man chat's been going off all day today. I've not seen it until I come back from work. Hundreds of messages, everyone hammering Billy, Lawless right at the centre of it all. I can imagine. Little Dan just putting little chips in now and again. Joe, the lead fan who we've had on the channel, just chipping in about McKennie, or he calls him Western McDonald's. Is what Joe refers to him as, due to the fitness issues that you had at the club. I just find that deal absolutely baffling. It looks like it's going through. So Douglas Luiz is going with a swap deal of Weston McKennie, and I think there's a I can't remember his name, but a young
Jayless, someone.
Jayless Junior or something like that. a young fullback, I think he's a young left back, I think Billy referred to him as, and 20 million euros. 20 million euros.
Wow.
That deal. Now, not long ago, Billy valuated Douglas Luiz at 120 million.
What is he on?
Oh, no.
But he actually thinks this is the mad thing, and I only got this when I come back from work. When I went to him, went, come on, what's going on with this, Billy?
That's it.
Thank you,
the guy.
for that one.
Yeah.
I said to Billy, come on, like this is not good from Villa. And he goes, oh, I don't think it's that bad. I'm like, what? But they're hammering, they've been hammering him all day. I went back through the chat. They've hammered him all day because he puts a positive spin on everything and he thinks everything's great, regardless of whether it's not. And that's what their argument was. So yeah, he's been hammered all day, Billy has. But boys, what do you make? First of all, what do you make of that deal? And actually, do you think this stuff with the Premier League and this profit and sustainability is going to come towards a huge case where loads of teams are going to lump in together and go, we're not happy with this, and go at the Premier League? Like, what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Well, on the case bit first, I haven't got to read the Villa article about that, but so we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, the Chelsea one's ongoing since yesterday, the arbitration. But on the deal itself, absolutely makes no sense. Like we all said before, we take Douglas Luiz at Newcastle, and I don't get it at all. It's not it's for PSR related to get them out of the hole, whatever they're in. But the players are bringing the other way. Now I don't know about this guy here, Samuel, but the other guy, USA international. I don't rate him at all, as we talked about during the week. So yeah, it's a baffling one. I'd be building my team around Douglas Luiz because he's a pivotal figure in their team, and especially when they're going into the Champions League as well. I said it before when the season ended. I think Villa are going to be like us this season. They're going to fall by the wayside a bit. They'll struggle with the amount of games and everything else. But best of luck to them.
Best of luck to him, Daz says. Chris, what are your thoughts on this whole mad situation?
Well, I knew shit got serious when I seen Billy tweet today saying that apparently, what was it? Something like he basically conceded that the fact that in a previous tweet that he wrote something like, this is never going to happen, or I'm going mad if this happens, or something. And then he wrote, today, it seems like I'm going mad. It was him basically saying I've vastly underestimated these rumours in terms of Weston McKennie and Douglas Luiz. Firstly, I think the first thing, if I had the power, if I had the capability, I'd be getting on the phone to PIF and Eddie Howe and the Reuben brothers, etc., and I'd be saying, get in touch with Villa and just see what who you can get hold of, because by the sounds of it, if Villa are even contemplating this deal, that tells you the position they're in, because Douglas Luiz was a huge cog in their wheel last season, and to even contemplate letting him go and bringing in the likes of Weston McKennie kind of tells you where they are. I saw something today saying that apparently Villa are adamant that they want Weston McKennie included in the deal, and that would indicate to me that they're struggling in terms of having the money to be able to go out and buy a replacement. So the fact that Villa are even considering this deal would indicate that they clearly need to sell. So as I say, if I was Newcastle or any other clubs, I'd be ringing the Villa chairman and saying, who's up for grabs, who you want to sell. In terms of the PSR, it doesn't surprise me at all. I think there's a lot of clubs feeling the way the Villa chairman is. That Villa, Billy's putting a positive spin on it, which you do with your own club, don't you? But ultimately, they've just qualified for the Champions League for the first time. I don't even know whether it's since the Premier League started. I'm not
in 40-something years, I think it is.
Is it 40 years? Yeah, I knew it was a long time. So the first time in 40 years they qualified for the Champions League, and it's now being tinged with this sour note where they've let go arguably one of, if not their most important player, before a ball's even been kicked. And that can never be a positive thing. And then to try and replace him with Weston McKennie, who, by the way, is a very, very talented midfielder. but clearly there's other issues which we saw at Leeds, where whether they're attitude problems or whatnot, I don't know. But I certainly wouldn't be confident, letting Bruno go and going, "Oh, don't worry, we're getting Weston McKennie." Like I would be panicking right now, and we're not in the Champions League.
I'd be over to Newcastle on the steps protesting on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
It'd be like another Andy Cole thing, wouldn't it? Everyone would be flapping over it. And so the fact that Billy's staying calm, fair play to him. But I certainly wouldn't be happy. But it kind of tells you where everyone is now, doesn't it? It tells you where we are in the state of football. Villa have shown their hand first, seemingly having to get rid of Douglas Luiz in order to balance the books. And there's going to be other clubs. There's going to be, Forest will probably show the hand. I'm assuming they're going to be one of the clubs. Could be Everton, could be us, could be Chelsea. All the clubs that have been rumoured as having to sell, but Villa are having to do it. And, arguably, all the fans should be celebrating, and now they're losing the best player. And that kind of boils down to the whole PSR issue, doesn't it? And that's why Man City have kind of thrown the gauntlet down to the Premier League, as if to say, listen, enough's enough now. And that's one of the bigger clubs doing it as well, because they want to flex, they want to be able to go out and spend what they want to spend, and the fact that these rules are in place and it's preventing clubs from doing that's why Man City have taken this charge up against the Premier League, and now the Villa chairman or owner coming out and saying that he obviously feels exactly the same way, and I'm sure there'll be a host of other clubs that want to do exactly the same thing. Will it bring a change in the rules? We don't know. It certainly sounds like it might, or that they might even lessen it a little bit, even if they try and, raise the bar. So they go, okay, well, let's wipe off last season. We've had enough penalty point deductions last seaon. Let's start the new season. But again, it's going to rear its head in 12 months' time when everyone's in exactly the same position.
So if Villa said, right, enough's enough, we're going in, we're going to challenge the Premier League on the profit and sustainability, who do you think those clubs would be that will go, you know what, we're with you? If Villa said, right, we're putting it out there to the Premier League clubs, we're going in with this legal case, who wants in? Who wants to come and join us in this battle? Which teams do you think are going to come and join the fight?
Chelsea.
Okay. So Villa and Chelsea are two.
And City.
City. Yeah. Will jump. Well, they're already fighting. They're fighting the cause with the Premier League.
That's Forest.
Not Forest will be in there.
Okay. Everton. So that's 5. Okay.
You'd like to think Newcastle. Whether we'll show our hand or not, I don't know. But if enough clubs back it, maybe Newcastle will go. Do you know what? Yeah. We'll get
Golden Gods just put on the comment. I'll just steal it for a second. He thinks or he or she thinks Newcastle won't be in that. Interesting. So we've got 5 at the moment, potentially 6 if Newcastle are there. Any others? I'll throw some names out like Wolves, Palace.
Palace definitely.
But you reckon Palace definitely?
I think they're going to have to, because Palace are like a little gold mine at the moment. They've got Eze, they've got Elise, they've got Mateta, they've got Wharton, and all the vultures are circling. And if they want to keep hold of those players, and then obviously say to those players, listen, stay with us, we're going to bring this player in, that player in. Oh no, sorry, we can't progress as a club. We've got the money. Yeah, Leicester will be one. Yeah, absolutely. We've got the money. We want to invest, but we're not allowed to. And I think that is going to be the difficulty, certainly for the likes of Palace. And their Wolves owners are pretty well off. They're going to get frustrated sooner rather than later.
Okay, so we've named those 7 there. So let's just run through them again. So we've got Villa, Chelsea, Leicester, Man City. Who are the others?
Palace.
Palace, we've said definitely 1. 2 more. Forest.
Did we say Forest? Yeah, Forest. Did we say Everton?
Everton. There you go. So they're those 7. So if those 7 put themselves forward, this is then the next question. If those 7 put themselves forward, do you think Newcastle then at that point throw their hat in the ring when they know they've got 7 other clubs almost as a cushion, as a blanket to make 8?
I think for me, I think they'd want it to be nearer the 14. I think Newcastle would get involved if we got double figures. I think that's when Newcastle get it. I don't know if they do it this early, because unless another at this stage as it stands, unless another 6 clubs say, yeah, I agree, then they're going to have an issue. I mean, really, you could argue, couldn't you, that Ipswich and Southampton will probably be in that boat as well, because Ipswich and Southampton are going to have nooses around the neck as well. They're not going to be able to go out and spend 150 million. They've got the promotion money, but are they going to be able to go and spend, knowing that they could end up being in trouble if they overspend, like Forest have this season?
Well, they probably won't have the money to go mad, but they see the pattern that happens. The promoted clubs nearly always get relegated because they can't have a go. And as Keith says, only for the boy at Notts Forest, he was up for having a go, and that's where look they were hit with points deductions because they did have that go, and also actually in for clubs being promoted, aren't they? Don't they have a restricted? They're not operating with 105. They have significantly less than that to work with for that first year or so that they're in the Premier League. So
so you could say that they'd be guaranteed to go in. So then would that push us to 9, Pete, if we did Ipswich and Southampton as the 2 following Leicester?
Yeah, potentially. Because you got. Well, I think I threw Newcastle in there as that option, but yeah, you got 9, and then potentially 10 with Newcastle maybe.
Well, you've got Bournemouth as well, Pete. I think you mentioned Bournemouth, and Bournemouth have recently been taken over, haven't they, by rich American owners? They're going to find themselves in the same boat unless they sell Solanke. They're not going to be able to spend what they want to spend.
Well, funny you said that because it came into the chat earlier about Arsenal. Apparently, it's on Sky. Arsenal are looking at Solanke, 65 million, and Arsenal fans are kicking off. You know what I thought? You know what I found really interesting is that obviously with Sesko now deciding to stay. Well, there you go. And this is what I was going to bring up, is because Sesko's obviously decided to stay in another year. He's got a gentleman's agreement. He'll probably go off next summer to whoever he wants to sign for. What was interesting is that as soon as that was reported, because all I've seen from Arsenal is compilations of Benjamin Sesko scoring this goal and he's this next Haaland, all the rest of it. No Isak tall. All of a sudden that falls down. I saw the Arsenal account saying, "Oh, we only ever wanted Isak. He's coming." And a lot of Arsenal fans, to be fair, they've cottoned onto it now, and they're going, "Hold on, like Isak's not coming to us. Newcastle are not selling him." I think that some of the smarter Arsenal fans have started to pick up on it. But then, because they think they need to be getting this elite striker or can be. And now they're linked with Dominic Solanke, who scored 18 goals last season. I think 18, 19 goals. He had a good season. They're now turning their nose up to it. But I hope they
should be going Tony. They should be going Tony. They should. Because he'd be a decent price as well. Tony's probably about 40 million.
Tony. Now, do we... If we get 20 million, right, this is a genuine question. If we get around 20 million, 15, 20 million for either Miggy or Wilson, Wilson, we might get 15, 20. Miggy, we depend on who they go to. If they go to Saudi, you might get 20, 25, 30 for Miggy, depending on how much we get. Probably 25 max for Miggy, if we're being honest. Right? Do we invest that money and get someone like Ivan Toney to come into the club as a second striker alongside Alexander Isak? Do we pass that opportunity to get someone that was part of? Actually, interesting question. Does he count as homegrown? I don't know if he was at the club early enough for 3 years. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that.
Sure. If someone can answer that in the chat, put it in for them.
Yeah. Does he count as homegrown between the age of 15 and 21? Was he at the club for 3 years? If he was, he'll count as homegrown. So with that, do we go and invest that 40 million for a guy that can quite easily score 15 goals minimum a season with regular football?
Okay, for 40 million, yes, you buy him for 40 million. We know there's the old baggage that comes with them, but we're not going to play with 2 up front. It's not Eddie's style. It's not the tactic that clubs play now these days either. So are we going to move Isak out to the left That's Gordon's position. Are we going to tweak our tactics to accommodate to try and win we, or maybe we go behind it again? We bring the two of them on. Then we kind of see two up front. But then the other thing is he going to want to come to Newcastle knowing he's going to be second fiddle to Isak? I'd go down the other way of bringing in, and like Sesko's off the table now anyway, and we probably wouldn't have got him if he wasn't off the table. But I would go look at the young lad from Besiktas, a different type of player, the Sergio Aguero style player, someone of that ilk to come in and be that backup second striker, and we'll get a plenty of games first. That's the route I'd go. But I'm not opposed to bringing in Tony for 40 million. But would he come?
What do you think, Chris?
I don't know, P. I think you've got me thinking now. Because if we're led to believe that Tony's available for around 40 million, now obviously he's only got a year left on his contract. Yes, he comes with baggage. Someone in the chat then, I don't have to repeat what they said, but we all agree with what you're saying. He does come with baggage. Obviously, he's played for Newcastle, knows the area. Will settle in pretty quickly. Would Eddie Howe be able to kind of turn him around? I hate to say this, but would we want Tonali and Ivan Toney together? I don't know. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. But do you know what? He's an interesting player because you're right in what you're saying, Daz. And even when you were going through it, about the fact that we only play with Isak through the middle, and you would probably not see Isak kind of pushed out to the left to accommodate Tony. But we saw at the back end of last season, Eddie Howe changed his formation and made sure that he had Wilson and Isak up top with the two. And also, like, wouldn't it be just fantastic bringing on someone like Ivan Toney onto the pitch to either play up front with Isak, or you bring Isak off after 60, 65 minutes and go, do you know what, you've run your game now, Tony, you come on. I think we'd see, if we did bring someone like Tony in, I think you would see him being utilised far more than your average backup striker. I think it would very much be a rotation kind of thing. And as we know, Isak can play on the left. It is an option. Ideally, I don't think it would be a permanent option because Gordon is there predominantly on the left. But if you wanted to change things up a little bit, it just gives you more options, doesn't it? And we all know as well, particularly if Kieran Trippier goes, we all know how deadly Ivan Toney is from free kick specialist. So having someone like him on the books.
Penalties. There'll be a right fight on for penalties between and Tony, but we would definitely be confident in a penalty shootout. That's for sure.
Definitely.
For me, it's a no-brainer for me. I'd get him in. I really would. Like we mentioned that, in quite rightly, like baggage. What he's done his kind of bang. Yeah. What other baggage has he got? He's apparently elements of his attitude, but whenever I see him play, he looks fully motivated. He looks bang at it. He looks hungry to score goals, which is what we want. And look, let's face it, we've had players with baggage over the years, worse baggage than him, and we've absolutely loved them. Joey Barton, just one example that you can think of. Niall Ranger. St. Maximum, but Niall Ranger was one. I think the fans started to really kind of grow an affiliation to him, but then he'd just go and do an absolute madness. And in the end, he kind of ruined his own career. But like, I just think with Ivan Toney, like, what there's no different situation than it is with Wilson and Isak, and that worked. The only reason it didn't work is because Wilson couldn't stay fit. Like that was it.
Yeah, okay.
And so it can work. And I just think if I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, if Arsenal, if Man City, if Arsenal, if Liverpool, right, are not interested in you, and maybe even a Tottenham, which they might well be, who knows? If those four teams are not interested in you, right? Who then is your option in the Premier League? Because I can't see him staying at Brentford. If those four teams are not interested in you, who are you going to go to? Man United going to be looking at him? They already want Højlund as their main striker. They just want a backup. So are they in a similar situation to us? Like West Ham, maybe? But I don't know. I don't know.
Spurs.
The biggest one would be Spurs because they still haven't replaced Kane. They still haven't. I know they brought Richarlison in, but he's not. He's probably not the answer. But Spurs is a shout.
And that's the thing, and it depends if they want him. He'll probably go there. Other than that, everyone else is in a similar boat, and everyone else is in a real opportunity. And if you're Ivan Toney, and you're as confident as he comes across, you're going to be thinking to yourself, well, yeah, I'm good enough to get into that team. I'm good enough to score goals. I've got a point to prove going back to Newcastle, actually doing the business. I was never given the opportunity under Rafa. I want to go there and prove that I can do it. Yeah, I don't know whether he's not likely to come, but sorry, Daz, go on.
Where did the 40 million come out of? Because originally there was talk of 60 million, or 60 million plus for Tony. So where is this 40? Is it because his contract hasn't got long in his contract, or where is that?
1 year left on his contract. He's got 1 year left on his contract, and there was a report just before or just after the end of the season that said his fee could be as low as 40 to 45 million. Like, to be fair, and we talked about it actually when we talked about Tony at the back end of the season. I think in the build up to the Brentford game, last game of the season, is that actually I think he's gone like 12 games without scoring a goal. And like he went a long period, because we talked about on away days. That was when it was. We talked about it on away days.
I remember hearing somewhere.
And he'd gone like 11. I think it was 11 games going into that final game of the season without scoring a goal. And you know, he was obviously getting frustrated with it. And all those links with Arsenal completely disappeared because he went on that massive run where playing and not scoring. And I think that's probably dropped the price because people are looking at it and going, well, he isn't the goal machine. He hasn't been the goal machine that we expected him to be. Is he the same player now coming back from his ban than he was before? Those questions would be going through clubs' heads. And it wouldn't help, if he'd have gone in those 11 games and bagged a goal in every one of those games, they could justify the 60 million. And someone would have probably paid it. Arsenal would have probably paid it. But because he's not bagging the goals, everyone's kind of gone, oh, okay, should we be spending that sort of money? And are questioning it within the club. And they're just holding off because there's been no links with him. I looked on socials everywhere. Nobody really is linked with him at the moment. Nobody's talking about Tony.
No.
I wonder, hypothetical, Kane gets injured at the Euros, Tony comes on, scores a few goals, back up to 60 million again.
Possibly.
Good point.
Yeah, great point. I would have him, for me, I'd have him coming on first before Ollie Watkins.
Oh, yeah.
I'd have him coming on first. If there's a chance to nick a goal somewhere, for me, Tony's more likely to get that for sure. But yeah, just a random conversation about players. This is what the full loan transfer is. Not just all the links. It's about opinions and conversations. We talk Villa, PSR, and fighting the good fight. Not heard anything from Man City in the arbitration yet.
No, you won't. I don't think until 2 weeks though.
Could that be a good sign? Because like Keith talked about on our show last Thursday, when things are maybe to try and drum up support for the Premier League may leak one or two things out there to let people know what's going on. It's gone quiet, nobody's saying anything. Could that be a good sign that Man City are doing what they need to, or would you expect Man City to be putting that out that things are going well? I don't know. It's interesting.
I don't know. Right, lads. Let's move in. I think we're going to bring the show to a close, but we want to tell people what's happening tomorrow because there's a big show happening tomorrow. Before we do that, let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Let's give a shout out to. Yes, there's never been a better time to get your radiator sorted. Contact Russ at theradiatorshed.com. That's his email address. or call him on 077-666-04112. And he will sort you out. Get them sorted and get ready for the winter. Or he provides services as well. You can get them cleaned and loads of different things. Check what he has on. To go. Great song, yes, great tune. So we'll put that scrolling across the bottom in a second. Also, yes, for this one from Manscaped, we're also partnered up with Manscaped, and if you use the same code loaded20 at manscaped.com, you will get 20% off and free shipping for across all the Manscaped range. And Father's Day is coming up. Looking for a present. Plenty of options there, so check that out. And the delivery is quick as well, so you can go check that out and get it sorted.
Daz, what better present for Father's Day than a Manscaped present? What better present? Loaded 20, Father's Day. What better gift to a father than Manscaped's finest?
Here's a tool to shave your balls.
There you go.
There you go.
And if you don't want to go down that direction, maybe a small radiator would be right up your alley.
Why?
What better present than a small radiator?
I wasn't even saying anything bad. Oh my God!
Yes, you never live that one down. Yes, and that one is the number, and it's scrolling across the bottom, and the email address as well for Russ at the Radiator Shed. Right. We always try to break it, Pete. But yeah, let's tell people, Pete, what's happening tomorrow.
Big show.
Who we got? 7 o'clock on Locked On Loaded for your eyes only.
Yes, the main man.
Oh,
is back. Excited to come in, join the Loaded Boys on another Fully Loaded transfer show tomorrow night. We get the latest from Keith Downey, Sky Sports News reporter of all things Newcastle United. We're delighted he's coming to join us again, not the first time, and it won't be the last. Keith Downey will be back, so get your questions to us in the chat nice and early, because we are going to have a designated question section for him, so you can ask him anything Newcastle United related. So yes, do not miss tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Be there.
Jimmy, you can ask him the question, did he meet you in Atlanta as well?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that one. Jimmy.
Hey, we'll have to ask Keith what his thoughts are on Ivan Toney. See what he thinks.
Yeah,
Good one. Good one to ask. Yes, I'm just going to go one last comment in the chat, and we'll close down there, because it comes from Ethan, and this lad, CJ, I think is his nickname. We might be talking a bit about him maybe on Thursday. So keep an eye on that one. The 14-year-old started from Portsmouth that we're after signing. But yeah, keep an eye on that. But we're back tomorrow first with Keith Downey. And that's it. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Thanks a million to Scott Wilson for coming on. I didn't get to say thanks to him properly because my internet died. But no, it was great to have him on. I guess the only thing left to do is do a bit of this. How'd you like that? Good night, everyone.
How you like